I'm just saying, if you want it, I know you want it. What's it worth to you? I'm accepting diesel or petrol. Okay, I will accept all offers in liquid fuels. Don't give me this bullshit money nonsense. It's worthless. I don't want it. How many liters of what will you give me for my play button?
Ooh, I tell you what, we've got diesel in the bank, so what's it worth to you?
Listen, I would just like to be able to get to the supermarket and back, preferably, and back.
You might have to start walking.
500 mils, probably like 700 mils, just to make sure I get up the hill at the end of the trip.
Yeah.
That's all I need. That's all I need. Just
I'll sell
I
you.
know I'm asking a lot. I'm asking for $1 million equivalent, but
Yeah.
that's all I need.
You remember when Zimbabwe hit record inflation and they're walking around with wheelbarrows of cash?
Oh yeah,
that's what we'll be doing for fuel soon.
The same thing happened in Germany during the Weimar Republic as they hit hyperinflation. It was that was the wheelbarrow thing as well. Now, of course, you know what happens when they don't have to print the money anymore. It's just numbers in bank accounts now. So if anything, it's even easier.
Weird thing. This is the weird thing about it, because our currency is not backed by anything.
Well, yeah. Well, notionally, our currency is backed by the Australian economy, and therefore the ability to tax. Essentially, that's what it is. It's kind of like a company isn't worth anything except its ability to generate a profit. A country's currency isn't worth anything except for that government's ability to tax people to meet the obligations on its debt. So that's kind of we're literally backed by you and me being tax slaves. But the bottom line is, there is no limit to how worthless our currency can become. And the people who are currently in charge of our currency are imbeciles. So,
Well, on that lovely note, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live show of the Oddcast. I will say I'm slightly buoyed by the conversations I'm having with total random people. So people at my gym, service station, wherever we're going. Everyone is now starting to wake up to the fact that we are run by imbeciles, which we knew. We already knew this. But as I always say, your average punter is now going, hang on a minute, this doesn't make sense. Of course it doesn't make sense. And, this is 20 years of political apathy that's led to this moment. This isn't like Albo woke up yesterday and became retarded. No. This is them. This is how they've always been. And people starting to pay attention. I find it really interesting.
It is. And, things that we never thought would be relevant to our lives are suddenly becoming relevant. I've said this before, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. When I came back from Venezuela,
oh God!
When I came back from Venezuela in 2015, oh yeah,
cheers.
I hope you've all got fresh bottles, because if they were already half empty, you're going to be gone before they'll be gone before we're halfway through the show. I said to people, we're not special. If we do the same stupid things, we'll get the same stupid results. And people mocked and they laughed. And they laughed for two reasons. Either they believed that we could do the same stupid things and somehow magically get a better result because we're special, or they just believed that we would never do those stupid things. They just honestly thought we would never be that dumb. And I'm sorry, but are you kind of getting the picture yet? Like we've gone backwards by over a decade in our living standard in just the last 2 or 3 years. Like, honestly, we are that dumb. We can go full Venezuela. There is nothing magical that's stopping us. Now, I don't think we will, because hard work can stop us. But if we sit on our hands and say, she'll be right, then no, absolutely, we're going all the way down.
Well, I am, like I said, so random conversation I had with a lady running a store the other day. And the thing is too, I'm not asking for these conversations. That's why I'm excited about it. I'm not going, hey, let's talk politics, It's just people volunteering information. So I went into a store the other day. I was buying pet collars, for God's sakes. And she said, things are pretty bad at the moment, aren't they? And I said, yeah, look, I think everyone's getting a bit of a reality check. And she was saying, her mortgage has gone up because of the interest rates. And because she ran a store, she was talking about theft. And she's like, I've never seen it this bad. We've never had so many people stealing from our store. And I said, what do you do when someone steals? And she's like, look, I want to chase them and do something, but now I don't know if they have knives or machetes. So I just let them go. And she said that, she was in a center of shops, and she said they've all had a bit of a meeting and they've all sort of started to say, okay, let's do like a bit of a neighborhood watch thing, which, guys, like 3 years ago, that was unheard of. Most people don't even know their neighbors' names anymore. But the fact that you've got people just of their own, like just voluntarily going, hey, let's start a bit of a neighborhood watch thing again. That gives me a bit of excitement because people are realizing, hey, we have agency. We can take action. Our government's not doing anything about it. What can we do about it? And I was actually really quite happy to hear that today or yesterday.
So speaking of you being quite excited, did they supply the studded collars in G's size, or did you have to go to another shop?
I wasn't going to give that part away, but I mean, it's me that's wearing the dog collar today. No.
Well, yeah, fair enough. Well, here we go. Someone wants to do advertising for me because we are so good at grifting. We get through entire shows at a time without a single bit of grift. Jen Oz, if you'd like to just go for the grift on my behalf, you'd be very, very welcome.
How did it go?
Carly, well, I thought it went very, very well. The feedback's been really good. I just had a realization. Did we adjust the price?
No.
So people can actually jump in and still get the early bird because we're not stopping the show now to go and change it. So someone could actually jump in and get the early bird price now. We didn't set, I promise you, we did not set this up. This wasn't, this would be the most sophisticated, multi-layered bit of grift we have ever done. We are not this organized. No, guys.
People give us too much credit. They're like, oh, they thought about this. And like, actually, we didn't.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So, guys, we've done the very first session. It was on values. Jen Oz says it was bloody awesome. And it went very, very well. It's pretty challenging. It's not necessarily for, if you're not someone who wants to do the hard work, don't do this course. This is for people, if you know that life is tough and you have to not necessarily get tougher, but you have to be fully present and engaged, and you need to bring all the elements of your life into alignment so that everything you're doing is taking you in the direction you want to go. Doesn't mean you have to be tougher. This isn't a toughness thing. This is about making sure you're not wasting energy, you're not wasting time, you're not wasting your life. And the values session we just did was the first part of that. Thank you, Dr. Lynette. That's right. Lynette, how are you? We met Lynette at the first birthday party. Yeah, so guys, do jump on that if that's something that's of interest to you. Head over to topherfield.com, find the masterclass in the shop. We forgot to raise the price, so it's actually still on the early bird special. And I will say, Arthur and Fenchurch, the AI course is pretty good too.
I was gonna say we've got oddies against each other at the moment. My AI masterclass is in a month, so not to like take away, but yes. So on that, how good's it look? Come on, look at it.
It does look great. It does look great.
It's pretty. It's pretty, and like there's little robots and stuff. Like, come on.
Yeah,
it's very cute.
Sloth makes an interesting comment here. Getting your head in the game without coming across as an asshole is the hardest part. Why not just come across as an asshole? That's my question.
Yeah.
You know, we worry a lot about what other people think of us. And now I'm not saying actually be an asshole. I'm not saying actually be horrible to people and do mean things and all that. But if someone thinks you're an asshole just because you've got your shit together and you're pulling your life along in a good direction, oh well. Meaningless collateral damage. Yeah.
I will say, so obviously I've been putting up some reels, and last week, or maybe it was the week before now, I can't remember, I put up a reel about witchery, and they just released a new collection. And I said the thing, right? I said the thing that everyone was thinking, but no one said it, and it went mega viral. And for someone who doesn't have a lot of big connections in the fashion industry, all of a sudden I got them. Because I said the unthinkable, right? And so the first thing you got to prepare yourself is, particularly when you have a backbone, is the first thing is the onslaught of hate. You know, I had lots of negative comments, that's fine. But then all of a sudden came the people going, she's right, you know, like what she said's accurate. And then all the people that, like when I say the people that matter, the fashion peoples, they all started following me from this witchery reel. And I've gone up 20,000 Instagram followers in like a month. And it just goes to show when you're brave enough to you know, stand up straight and say something with conviction, and it cuts through. Yes, you get a little bit of hate to begin with, but you know, there's something to be said with being brave, and I think very few people are these days. All
right, so we've got some nominations for topics already. Albo's mosque visit was the highlight of the week for me. He bent over backwards for them post Bondi and they still gave him that reception. This is why we invented the phrase, do not negotiate with terrorists. And I'm not saying that all Muslims are terrorists. I would say the same thing about feminists. In fact, I have said the same thing about feminists. You do not negotiate with people whose only aim is to destroy you, because there is no reconciling. You can negotiate with someone who's got a grievance with you that can be settled. Someone who's got a business deal went bad and they want some money out of you to make up for some of their, you can negotiate that, because there's a point at which they're going to draw a line underneath it and go, okay, fine. I might not be happy, but we'll call it done and we'll walk away. Yeah. The minute someone isn't going to do that ever, there is no point at which they go, okay, fine, we'll leave you alone now. You must not give them anything at all. If there isn't a point of satisfaction, give them nothing. And this is what Albo is discovering the hard way.
Yeah, absolutely is. I think the other thing is too, I think the left are starting to wake up to the fact that no matter how much you pander to people, no matter how much you virtue signal, they will turn on you. The left always eats its own children. Revolution eats its own children, as they say. With Albo, I mean, everyone overstates the importance of Western Sydney. So many people talk about this. They need the Western Sydney vote. They need the seats. I understand that. But at the risk of offending the rest of the country, they're chasing these seats. Now, I don't know off the top of my head how many seats is in Western Sydney, or the Muslim vote, as they call it. But if you're chasing one thing, one small fish, and you're missing the big school that's going past you, I don't think that's a very smart political strategy. It was when everyone was apathetic. And I mean, we've talked about this at length before. COVID, as we know, was the thing that woke everyone up. But with what's happening now, everyone's super skeptical because of COVID. Everyone's super skeptical about the government. Once everything starts to hit you directly, it's fuel prices are going up, groceries are going up, utilities are going up, interest rates are going up. Everyone's starting to feel a pinch now, and it doesn't matter where you are in the in financial status. You can be someone who's on really small means to someone who's quite wealthy. You're getting hit every direction anyway. And people seem to underestimate that. Just because people have a high income, they seem to think that they're immune to it. Well, they're not. They're usually over leveraged as well, and so interest rates hit them just as much. But I think what people are starting to realize is that this is diabolical. This is really getting to a point where you have to pay attention. And Albo and the rest of Labor, and we'll talk about this in a second, I don't think they realize how, I hate saying the word awake, but how much more the Australian public's paying attention. The conversation is, you can't stifle it anymore. And they're trying. The mainstream media is definitely trying to run interference.
And we're going to talk about that in relation to the South Australian election tonight. But you're absolutely right. And what's happened is this silent, with the cone of silence, the wall that used to be up in Australian culture. If you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about money. That used to be the unspoken rule, and sometimes even the spoken rule. My dad taught me that when I was a kid. Lots of people were taught that when you were a kid. And that's gone now. And in fact, people are very happy to talk about politics, and they're very happy to raise politics, even amongst people that they know aren't going to agree with them, because they're so sick and tired. They're being hurt now. This is what we've talked about before. If people don't care about politics until it hurts them. Well, what COVID did and what's been happening since is people have realized, hey, this is actually hurting me. And so that silence now becomes cowardice. It's like, well, I have to choose between your feelings and risking hurting your feelings, or failing to stand up for my own family, my wife, my kids, their future, our financial situation. Well, I'm sorry, if you're hurting my wife and my kids, I'm going to piss you off. Like, I don't care. I don't care about your feelings anymore, because you're actually hurting me. And so that changes the rules. It changes the rules of engagement entirely. Now, what I will say is we've got this situation, and South Australia illustrates this. You were talking about Western Sydney. You don't really need Western Sydney, because if you pander to them and you lose the bigger picture, then you lose overall. The problem is that when no one's paying attention, appealing to the interest groups works, because you get their attention and it doesn't cost you much in the grand scheme of things. This is what they haven't realized yet, is the rest of the country's now paying attention. You don't get away with pandering to the interest groups. You don't get the upside with no downside. There is now downside. Now, South Australia is its own interest group. This is why South Australia is able to get away with so much of what it gets away with, and why it's now such an entrenched Labor government. Because the Labor government, of course, can just promise. South Australia is a state that at a federal level, they pander to relentlessly. It's amazing. more than half of the reason why we threw hundreds of millions of dollars at the car industry was because South Australia had a couple of manufacturers over there. Now, yes, we had them in Victoria as well, but actually it was about South Australian votes. The whole AUKUS thing, the submarine thing, the French submarine deal that went bad, now AUKUS, etc. It's all been predicated around the idea that we're going to keep the shipyards in South Australia going. Right, we're going to keep them busy down here. You look at the whole Murray-Darling Basin plan. The entire thing is built around looking after the lower lakes, which is in the southeast corner of South Australia. South Australia, for some reason, has a really disproportionate level of clout when it comes to federal politics. And that means that both sides of federal politics are very happy to throw things at them, and they've cultivated a Labor, a hardcore now, deeply entrenched Labor mindset in that state. Now, previously, they've been able to do that, and it hasn't cost them because the rest of Australia hasn't paid enough attention. I'm going to be really interested to see what happens between now and 2 years' time with the federal election. How much, now that you've got a deep red Labor government in federally, now we've got obviously Malinauskas with an even bigger majority at a state level. Are they actually going to go so hard now that it begins to genuinely piss off the rest of the country because the rest of the country is now paying attention?
Well, I think yes. So our mate, Friendly Geordie's put up a gloating YouTube video today, and I watched it, and he's pumped for One Nation. He thinks One Nation's hilarious, but he just said, I'm tired of winning in his kind of, way.
Yeah.
And I watched it and I went, Geordie's, you've underestimated. Like yes, you're winning now. You are in the throes of a dying animal, because what you'll see in South Australia is overconfidence now. He won. Is this his third term or his second term, Malinauskas?
Second, I think, with him as leader.
But from what I understand, South Australia's had Labor for 24 years.
As a state, they've been hard Labor, apart from, I think, one term has been the exception in the last 20 years. I will say Malinauskas has, at least from what I've seen, he's actually been actively warning against hubris, against complacency. He does seem to be a very sophisticated politician. He seems to be very good at what he does. And I can see why he's popular, and he's, they're talking about him going into federal politics and potentially a future Labor Prime Minister one day and all that kind of stuff. And I think he's got the potential to do that. I think he's a very sophisticated political animal. And I don't think he's evil in the way that I believe Daniel Andrews was. Daniel Andrews was also a very sophisticated political animal, but he was Machiavellian. He didn't actually care about anyone. He only cared about politics. I think Peter Malinauskas, if I've got the read on him correctly, he is a true believer in the Labor cause. He's not just there for himself. He's a true believer in the Labor cause. His policy positions and decisions are actually not terrible in comparison.
Is he like old school Labor? Like, are we talking Hawke and Keating Labor?
I would say he's more old school, yes, and more representative of what people imagine the Labor Party to be, not sort of what it became under, or what it's become under Albanese and what it was under Daniel Andrews. So I actually think he's going to do probably a half decent job by uni-party standards. I think he's going to be a decent premier by uni-party standards. And to be honest, I'm not at all surprised. And in fact, we predicted here on this show that he was going to get returned with a very, very healthy majority. But the reality is we need a functioning opposition. The Liberal Party have had opportunity after opportunity to be that. They're not. They're not capable anymore. And I say that with regret. At a federal level, Senator Alex Antic, a senator in South Australia in the federal government, he's fantastic. But for some reason, the party as a whole and the state Liberal Party just don't have it. They just don't have it anymore. And so this swapping, people are saying, oh, well, One Nation's just, all they're doing is stealing the Liberal vote. Well, we can go down that path if you want to. I actually disagree. But let's say that's what's true. You're going from a fake Conservative Party to an actual Conservative Party. That's still an upgrade compared to just going on with the status quo that we've had.
I think as well, when you're in when you're in an echo chamber, you think about the Labor caucus, right? They're all talking to each other. They're just playing politics. And this is something I brought up with you before. I understand the policy. I understand the power brokers. I understand the factions, the more socialist faction, the more right-leaning faction. I get all that. But this is where a lot of them overplay their hand. And that was what I was saying. Like, you talked about hubris. With Albo and him winning the second term, with Malinauskas winning his second term, and people still feeling like, the majority of Australians still want a Labor government. Sure. You might think that, but based on the polls and they're not listening to the polls because, yes, they did
Yeah.
win. Okay. I know they won, but
Yeah.
people are fed up. People are frustrated. And Albo can't win. He cannot get a score on the board, right? We've seen that. The Muslims are
Yeah.
angry at him. The Jews are angry at him. Your typical Australians are angry at him. The farmers are angry at him. You think about all these different groups. And what happens is, Albo is going to overplay his hand and try and do something to appease people, like 20% off student debt, free TAFE. No, what people want is for you to turn on the coal-fired plants, to bring back like oil exploration, to do refinery on Australian shores, to charge tax for all the people taking all our natural gas. That's what Australians want. He won't do it because he knows that affects his bottom line. It affects all the lobbyists. And what you have is he cannot win. It doesn't matter what he does now. And I've said before, this is reminiscent of the French Revolution. This is like a let them eat cake and they're calling for his head. I don't think we're going to roll out the guillotines. That's not what I'm saying. But I don't think there is anything the Labor Party can do to crawl back the people who are abandoning it. And they're jumping ship. There's no doubt about it.
So it was a commanding win on only about just over one third primary vote in South Australia for the Labor Party, right? So 2/3 or 60% of people didn't vote for the Labor Party first, but the Labor Party still won a commanding win. And don't give me some crap about how this is why preferences are bad and we have to get rid of them. The same thing happens with the first past the post system, okay? The exact same thing happens. So it's not about which system we're using. But I want to bring this up here because Flurf Debunk is one of our sort of, I think he's a wannabe troll. I think he thinks he's got what it takes, but he's very in again, out again kind of, he's not really committed to it. But anyway, he says LMAO Orange Wave 4 seats. There's a funny thing, Mr. Flurf, that, people were saying LMAO Orange Wave 0 seats. On the day of the election, we had with a snarky gherkin coming out maliciously, in my opinion. I think he knows better. He knew that it was misinformation, using the Electoral Commission of South Australia website, which was not calculating two-party preferred with One Nation as one of those two parties. They were calculating it based on the results from the previous election. And so it was known to be inaccurate. It was known that these numbers were going to be wrong. And Snarky Gherkin comes out and has a big post. I checked earlier today to see if it was even still there, whether he'd deleted it. Nope, it's still there. And he's defending it by saying, oh, but this was accurate at the time. No, dude. It wasn't even accurate at the time. Right? This was never accurate. Right? But they're all laughing, oh, 0 seats. And then 0 turns into 1, turns into 2, turns into maybe 4 in the lower house, certainly 3 in the upper house. Here's the funny thing, Flurf Debunk, that I suggest you catch up with real freaking quick. Otherwise, the future is going to be really rough on you. The results in the South Australian election are basically exactly as per the polling prior to the election. Right? This tells you a couple of things. All this nonsense about how there's no depth to the support. It's just bots. They're just paying for followers. All that stuff debunked. The polls held in the actual election. What it also means is that this poll here, which was just done at a federal level, and this is genuinely one of the largest opinion polls in terms of the sample size that I've ever seen. I think 8,400 odd people in this. That is an extraordinary sample. If a federal election were held today, Labor would get 29%, One Nation would get 27%, Liberal National 21%, Greens, Greens at 12%, and look at the distribution of seats. Now, Flurf, remember the entire point that we've been making. We all agreed that Labor were going to win South Australia. That's not news. That's not a surprise, and it doesn't prove anything. The question was, will One Nation's support in the polls turn into votes on election day? We now know that the answer is yes. So when we see polls like this, and we hear people like you going, okay, let's just wait. Let's just wait and see. Because I promise you, the Farah by-election, it's not far away. That's going to go pretty well for One Nation. Not 100% sure they'll win, but boy, they'll be close. Victoria, that's going to go real well for One Nation. I cannot begin to tell you how fed up Victorians are suddenly becoming. It's belated. It's years and years and years later than they should have. But right now, the anger that is rising at a ground level in Victoria is very, very real. We see it in the polls, and we're going to see it on election day. That's only November. That's only 8 months away. And from there, we'll only be a year and a half at most, probably less, away from the next federal election where this or an even bigger orange wave is going to take place.
So when we talk about an orange wave, Flurf, just to bring you up to speed, One Nation were at 2%, what, 8 months ago?
Oh, no, they're a bit more, sort of 5.5%, 6%. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was significantly lower than it is. This is unheard of. And I think people are underestimating. They don't want to they don't want to admit that there could be a point where they lose. Well, there can be, because look at what is happening with all of the different, I'm going to say minorities. I don't say that they are oppressed minorities. I mean, the different factions of Australians, right, that make us up.
Yeah.
The Iranians detest Labor. The Iranians are turning their back on Labor. The Jewish community is turning their back on Labor. These are people who would have probably voted Labor most of their life. You've now got all of the people who have escaped either the Eastern Europe. You've got Venezuelans, Cubans across the world. Everyone who has genuinely experienced socialism is also rejecting the left. And so what are the Greens doing? They're doubling down. They're saying that, these Marxist ideas are the way forward. And the Greens are actually turning away their own voters. And remember, the Greens votes, because the Greens got to what, 11%, 12%? I think that's as big as they got.
Yeah.
They are,
which is pretty good for them.
Which is good. That's their biggest. They are hemorrhaging people at the moment because they are no longer the Greens party that they used to be. And remember, all of the Greens preferences flowed to Labor. Labor is hemorrhaging its own voter base. Now, it might have the bolt-on people. That's fine. They'll always be there. But you have a huge contingent of regular people who are now starting to look around and go, this sucks. You've got people for the first time in their life thinking about, do I leave the state? Do I leave the country? What do I do now? You've got people who for the last 30 years were considerably wealthy. And I don't mean mansions in Brighton and driving Ferraris. I mean wealthy middle class, no worries, mortgage paid off, bills paid on time, who are now going, hang on a minute, I have to worry about fuel prices. Hang on a minute. My gas bill is astronomical. These are new things for these people, and they're starting to look around and go, no, this isn't good. So you can be confident. But the one thing, right, it is easy to have a bleeding heart when you're not worried about yourself. But when push comes to shove, not that we're going to head for the zombie apocalypse, but people become incredibly selfish when they're struggling themselves, and they're going to make sure they're okay. And what that means is they're going to vote for the people who are going to serve their interests. No longer do they care about the Aboriginal voice. No longer will they care about trans rights. No longer will they indulge all of these, she, them, fucking they, them, whatever crap. People go, enough. What I care about is that my kids can get to school. What I care about is that I can get to work. What I care about is I can pay my mortgage, because that's all that matters at the end of the day. All of this nice to have, it'll be gone. The progressive shit, gone.
Yeah, it's the same thing. There's no feminists during a zombie apocalypse. They're all about the patriarchy and the men going out there and fighting. I was
going to say there's no feminists when there's a war and there's conscription, is there?
Yeah, that's right. They all disappear when their own
suddenly
neck is
they
on
all
the line.
Be housewives. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Joe,
sorry.
I was going to say, doesn't this prove to you? I mean, I'm talking to the converted. I know, like, you guys get it. But doesn't this show you how shallow and superficial all of this nonsense is? Like in COVID, when we were all at home and everyone was in the comfort of their house and on Instagram and talking about Black Lives Matter, Ukraine, trans rights, all that nonsense, it was easy because you weren't stressed, you weren't worried. I mean, some of us were, obviously. But now everyone's stressed. I don't know a single person, and I don't just mean my regular friends. I mean, anyone that I speak to who's like, yeah, life's amazing. Everyone's in the dumps. Everyone's feeling shit.
Yeah.
And that's making them look at things for the first time.
Yeah, 100%. So we've got a comment here from Joe. I'll be so proud of Vic if they don't vote for Labor again. Topher, why are they still doing this? Did Dan add something to the water before he left? Thing is, when you rob Peter to pay Paul likes that. Paul's a fan. And when you spend decades telling Paul that it's his right, and that if Peter doesn't want to be robbed, well, that Peter's evil. He's just being greedy. He's not giving you what you deserve, what your right is. You cultivate a selfish generation. We have cultivated an Australia where people don't understand where wealth comes from. They don't understand that you need the people who can actually organize labor and energy. I've talked about that before. A business and economy is just energy in various forms, labor, ideas, intelligence, electricity, literal energy, machinery, etc. These are all energy expressed in different forms. Energy plus organization. That's what your economy is. And what we do is we overemphasize the importance of the energy and we underemphasize the importance of the organization, otherwise known as entrepreneurs, business people, inventors, creators, etc. The organization is what makes all the difference. And when someone can come into a given situation, a business, when they can just sit there and go, I can see a different way of organizing that energy to then create a more valuable output from the same amount of inputs, or create an equally valuable output from fewer inputs, they get to keep the difference. And we end up resenting them. Oh, how come they got to make so much money? Because they found a way to create a gap, a difference in the input costs versus the value of the finished product. And they did that by figuring out a new way to organize the energy. It's literally that simple. And so when we become resentful of those people and we stop letting them keep that reward, those people either leave or they stop taking risks. They stop looking for the opportunities to decrease costs, to increase profits, to create a better product, to innovate, because there's no reward for them. There's only downside. We saw that during the Soviet Union. They were driving Trabants and Ladas that were exactly the same for 30 years, where in the West, models were changing every year, innovating, getting better. Technology was being driven forward. Why? Because in the West, you made money if you did that. You got rewarded. In the East, in the Soviet bloc, you did not.
Yeah,
that's literally what we're at risk of doing with Australia. We are getting so good at punishing our creators and our producers through taxes, through regulation, through all kinds of different ways. It's death by 1,000 cuts. But ultimately, there's an awful lot of Australians, including both you and I at different times of our lives, Carly, who've just sat there and gone, how is this still worth it? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Right. But on the flip side, there's all of the other people that are getting the benefits of all of that for nothing. And Joe, that's the answer to your question. Those are the people who are still voting for Labor. This is why I think John Howard committed an absolute crime when he expanded middle-class welfare, because he dramatically expanded the percentage of the Australian population that is just going to vote for money to go into their own pockets. And that's what puts us into the mess that we're in now.
Well, I was going to say, I think there comes a level of, well, everyone else is doing it, I'm going to do it too, right? Yep. Particularly when it means, whether it's the solar scheme, or it was, remember the red bat scheme, or it's all the different things that the government incentivizes you to do. People go, well, everyone else is doing it, I'm going to do it too. It's like the JobKeeper. Oh, everyone else is taking JobKeeper, I'm taking JobKeeper too. And you get to a point where everyone's like resentful. Well, you're getting something. Why aren't I getting something? And of course, with every scheme, there has to be a cutoff. There has to be like a qualifying amount. And people get really annoyed. Like, I'm just over, so I don't qualify for the childcare subsidy, or I'm just over this and I don't qualify for that. And what that does is it creates resentment, particularly at the more sort of upper side of the middle class, because they're the ones paying for it, right? The poor people aren't paying for it and the rich people aren't paying for it. So most of this comes down on the middle class. And remember, I've seen a few people going, Australia's super woke. To a degree, I would agree with you, right? Australians have a really strong bleeding heart. Australians, it's part of our culture that we love an underdog. We care about the Aussie battler, right? That is big part of our culture. So when you say we're super woke, we're not woke in the sense that we believe it, but we're woke in the sense of, oh, well, I don't want anyone to feel bad. And, I care about people.
We'll go along with it.
Yeah, we'll go along with it. I don't think Australians, when I mean generally, they're not super woke. They don't believe this crap. They just don't want to be seen as someone who doesn't care, who doesn't have empathy. And, gosh, I don't want you to struggle. Oh, gosh, I don't want that, right? That's the Australian way. But what you have, and Nate said it before, I lost your comment, Nate, but Nate said progressivism is a privilege. And to indulge in all of that
luxury
stuff,
beliefs.
It's a luxury belief, 100%. So when you talk about Australia being super woke, up until COVID, Australia was super comfortable. You didn't worry about it. You weren't worried that this was going to hurt your bottom line. But
we could afford the luxury beliefs.
100%. And it didn't hurt you. It didn't bother you. You didn't hurt your business. I'll give you an example. So this sort of started to really ring alarm bells for me in my business back when I had my clothing company at around 2000, I think it was 2017. And I think I've told this story again, but it's worth mentioning, right? This is the first time I got a taste of progressivism. Never thought about it before. I got samples from China and they were smaller than usual. They would have been like an Australian size 8. They just made them a bit too small. That's it. There was nothing to it than that. It wasn't me trying to make people size 8. It was just literally they were smaller than they should have been. And so I put up a thing on our Instagram saying, hey guys, like I'm looking for someone who's a size 8 to be in the shoot. And I honestly did not think a minute of it. I came back to Instagram, like, a few hours later. Whoa, I apparently just kicked a puppy. They're like, how can you do this? This is disgusting. And that was the first time I'd seen, it wasn't quite cancel culture, but it was like this level of vitriol that I just didn't think that would happen on the internet. And I remember sitting there going, what are you this is not a thing. Why is everyone so angry? And that was the beginning of the mob, right? And so the mob has been emboldened. That's what people don't realize. These used to just be a random squeaky wheel, but now the squeaky wheel was able to recruit people. And then it had strength in numbers. And so the squeaky wheel was only ever one or two people that were pissed off. And then what they did is they got people to pile on. And then that's why around 2020, 2021, we saw mass cancellations. Businesses were constantly apologizing. People were taking a knee and all of this nonsense because we hadn't had that before. And it was terrifying. As someone who had an online cancellation, I can tell you now, when that barrage of hate comes at you like a fucking tsunami, you just sit there and you don't know what to do. It's awful. Now imagine that on a small scale. If you're a small business and all of a sudden you only get 2 or 3 comments on your social media from random people, all of a sudden you open it up and there's 40, 50 different people going, "You're shit, I hate you." It makes people panic. And so what you had was a bunch of Australians who were like, I don't want that to happen to us. We don't want that on our business. And that's the only reason all of the big corporates started putting rainbow flags in their freaking in their logos on social media. They were scared of the mob.
That's where you've then given an inch and you will forever be captive to the mob. This is why you don't negotiate with terrorists.
And
if
that's
they
my
throw
point.
everything at if they throw everything at you and it has no effect on you, eventually they give up and they go and find a softer target. And then they won't bother with you again. They wasted their energy once already. The moment you give them anything, they will be relentless on you forever. You'll never be free of them. Now, we've got a great comment here that I think is a candidate for the comment of the night. From Energy is Key. The other day on Facebook, Channel 7 had a warning about possible IRGC attacks in Australia. Someone said, all good, Jacinta is rolling out ballistic missile bins shortly. 100%, yes. Victorians are increasingly realizing just how badly they've been duped.
Oh, look, and that's the writing joke. I mean, the machete bins will go down as Victoria's most ridiculous move. But on the Victorian thing, as a current Melburnian, can I just tell you, I'm yet to find someone who still thinks Labor's good, right? And I'm talking people who would have voted Labor the last election, who thought, because remember, a lot of people still think Daniel Andrews saved lives. We're never going to convince those people, and whatever, they can think what they want. But now it's really easy to think that Daniel Andrews saved lives when it didn't bother you and it didn't hurt you in any way. For example, I've talked about this before, but I was a sole trader, so it impacted me the most. But I had friends who were in cushy jobs and they worked the whole way through. I had friends saying to me, I loved COVID. I saved so much money. It was amazing. And so that 2 different people had totally different experiences. But now those same people who probably rode a really cushy wave during COVID are now dealing with so many different things. I'll give you one example, right? I know I've talked about the crime wave before, but it's all easy to go, oh, there's no crime wave. It's not that bad. Next minute, your brand new car's stolen. You're held up by a machete. You got teenagers in your house ransacking your house. Nothing prepares you for that, and nothing can help you recover from that. That's it. That's in your brain for the rest of your life, right? Now, for sure. Most people in Melbourne have had a taste of this, whether it's your car's just being broken into because they've smashed the windows to steal something they could see, or your home's been broken into and they've stolen your keys and driven off with your car, or worse, they've attacked you. Now you've got people who are driving on the freeway, and these kids are so emboldened, they do not care. Just last night, massive terror wave here. They're calling it a terror wave because it is terrifying, right? You're on your way home from work. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You're on the Monash, and then there's a car with like 7 teenagers doing 190 down the road and the cops chasing them. This is Grand Theft Auto bullshit. This is proper like LA craziness here on Melbourne streets. We've never seen that before. People need to see it with their own eyes. And now that they have, there is nothing Jacinta can do. She's done. It's not because the Liberals are good, right? It's not because One Nation are a better opposition. It's because people are like, anything but what we're living through, anything but this.
Well, and this is the thing. The people of Australia have lost faith. It's like if you're in an abusive relationship and you can convince someone to keep coming back. I'm different this time. No, you just don't understand. I didn't mean it that way. And eventually, hopefully, the victim in that situation is gonna have that moment where they go, no, it wasn't me. It was you this whole time. You've been the problem this whole time and you haven't changed this whole time. The only thing I can do is leave, and I'm gonna.
Yep.
And no, you're not going to beg me to come back. All the tricks that worked on me before are not going to work anymore because I've had sort of the scales fall away from my eyes, so to speak. I think that's literally what's happening in Australian politics, is people are realizing that they've been trapped in an abusive relationship.
Moses, I'm actually going to disagree with you on this. So Moses has written, Melbourne is a lost cause. I'm going to go down on, and I'm sorry, I'm going to die on this hill. No, it's not. There are so many people who are invested in building Melbourne back. Like, Melburnians are definitely down on their luck. They are definitely feeling shafted. But the one thing I can say is most people want this state to be back to what it was. Everyone keeps referring to the old Melbourne, what we used to love, the Melbourne we remember. When you say Melbourne's a lost cause, you underestimate the human spirit. And this is one thing I would say to anyone that's feeling like it's all fucked, everything's too much. You underestimate the human spirit. Like, what we're going through right now is nothing in comparison to some of the horrendous things that have happened to humans throughout history. What we're going through, yeah, it sucks because it's different to what we've known. But compared to what happened in World War II, compared to what's happening in Iran right now, compared to what happened to North Korea, people underestimate the human spirit at all levels. And that is the single most important thing. If you don't have hope, then you got nothing. But I really do think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I can see it. There's a renewed energy. I don't know how to harness that. I don't think people know where to channel it, but the raw material's there. And I really do think that.
I agree with you. I think that Melbourne is absolutely savable, but I also agree with Baz. Can we just hurry up and build the damn wall? Okay. You can save yourselves over on the other side of that wall. Good luck. Have fun. All right. We don't need to be able to cross over.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree. I'll give you another example, because I keep seeing, I call them glimmers, right? So these aren't momentous things. They're not massive things for you to go, oh, wow, that's a definite tone shift. It's little things, right? Little things like, for example, I've mentioned the podcast Shameless before. 2 young Gen Z girls, I think they're both hitting their 30s, right? And these guys are pretty far left. They're progressive women.
Yeah. Even
they are now going, this isn't right. Albo's not doing the right thing by Australians. Yeah. Because if you're a considered person and you've got, some common sense, you can still be a lefty and look around and go, this isn't right. This is not what it should be. The fact that you've got people every week in Melbourne being killed by kids with machetes, having their homes broken into. I mean, you've got people living in fear, and it doesn't matter what suburb it is. It's hitting everyone.
All right. So
Flurf,
can we?
I'm gonna say, Flurf, if you don't turn off your caps, mate, I'm gonna put you in timeout. We don't do caps in the chat, so you can talk like a civilized human.
Yeah, you're welcome to be here, but honestly,
the caps.
Can I just connect the South Australian election with the Victorian election, because this matters?
Yes.
One of the things, actually, let me just bring up the actual data here, because I want to talk real numbers. South Australian election results. Just go to the Electoral Commission website. Oh, it's failing to load for me. I don't know why. Let me find the ABC one. That was doing that earlier today as well. Party totals. Here we go. Okay, so the Liberal Party have had their vote nearly halved, not quite, and they've got 156,000 votes in this election just now. That'll be I assume that's in the lower house. Now, they get about $5.50, something like that. I actually don't know exactly what it is in South Australia, but it's something like $5.50 per vote, right? So that means that 150,000 votes is going to translate to something like $750,000, somewhere, $800,000, somewhere in that kind of range. That's how they fund their campaigns. Yes, donations and all the rest of it, but actually fundamentally, we, the people, the voting public, actually pay them. And the reason they designed a system where they got paid according to the number of votes they received was because they were trying to design a system that was stacked in their favor, because they were already the big parties. They were already the ones getting more votes. And so when you have the Liberal Party lose close to half of its votes, that means that it's lost close to half of its electoral funding. And this matters because these parties today, they run their parties like they run the government, always in debt. They're not usually, there are exceptions, but they're not usually sitting on a big bank account full of cash and spending money they have in the bank. Usually they've taken out a loan, and there are companies that specialize in financing political campaigns. They'll sit there and they'll run the numbers and they'll decide, yeah, we think you can get at least this many votes, which means you're safely going to have that much revenue, which means we can loan you that much money, and we're pretty sure we're going to get it back. Well, whoever loaned the Liberal Party money in this case would have lost a lot. In this case. Now, what that means is that when the Victorian Liberal Party go back to their funders and say, hey, listen, we want to get another round of loans, there's another election coming, you know, we're good for it, we'll pay you back when the electoral funding comes back in. Well, the Victorian Liberal Party is already out of money. They've had all the nonsense, all the disaster that they had with the defamation lawsuit and everything else. So they've got no war chest to speak of. They're going to have to borrow this money in order just to fight the campaign. But who's going to lend it? We're not. No one's going to lend to them anything like what they made last election, because they know that their vote's going to get halved or less. I actually think the Liberal Party of Victoria are going to have some difficulty financing the Victorian campaign come November.
I think so too, and I think you think a lot of these political parties have dinners and fundraising events, right? Where they invite all their fancy people and they go, you know, do what fancy people do and get all their funding. Who'd want to do that for the Liberal Party right now? Who'd want to back them? Like, business owners aren't stupid. Business owners don't throw their money after dead weight. You know, I think business owners are going to go, well, you know, first thing, as a business owner myself, and G as well, we look at the fact that everything's just costing more. We want to go for the party who's going to help us be able to be better business owners. Because the thing that frustrates me, can we just talk about business for a second? Because remember, over half the Australian workforce is the public sector, right? By some way, or is it half that's on government money? I forget that.
It's half that's on government money. I was going to say, no, it's not half on, not half in the
quarter
sector.
Sorry, it's a quarter, I think. Sorry, I always get those two mixed up. So we have a huge contingent of the population who don't understand basic economics, right? You've got a whole generation of Gen Z who have been brought up on billionaires are evil, you know, tax the rich. Gen Z have basically been indoctrinated with Marxist thinking, right? So in their mind, if you have a business, you're sitting on piles of cash. You're some kind of evil person.
And you're Scrooge McDuck.
And that's fine. You can think that. But when all these businesses start closing and your options for employment start shrinking, your only option is to go either into the public sector or what are you going to do? You know? And I've seen so many young people over the last year, because remember, I pay attention to the culture stuff, who are coming out of university and who cannot get a job, right? And they're starting to realize this is a scam. They've done everything right? Millennials did the same thing. Millennials did it all right as well. We went to uni, we got our degrees, we worked our butts off, and we still can't afford houses. Everything that we were told to do has not come to fruition. Gen Z was even worse. You have to go to university, but not only do you go to university, you get like a gender studies degree or something inside like sociology or in the arts, and there's no jobs. Now, why aren't there jobs? Well, firstly, we don't have a government that supports small business. So who's going to go out there and innovate and look for young people like you? What you're looking for as a young person is an innovative company who's willing to take a risk. And they just don't exist right now. And, you know, so it might take a little bit longer, but it's starting to fracture people's thinking. They're going, hang on a minute. You told me I have to do this. You told me to do this. And the other thing is too, you think of Gen Z, right? The oldest Gen Z is 30. The youngest is 18, I think. They're all in the workforce. They're all getting their pay slips and they're all seeing where tax goes. They're all having to start pay back their uni debt with HEX. All of a sudden, they're getting real world experience. They're all paying rent. They're all having to pay utilities. They're all having to fend for themselves. I mean, some of them still live at home, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, a lot of these kids are starting to understand cause and effect. And it might take a while, but,
But this is what we talk about, where people look at younger generations being more left-leaning and they say, they're going to stay that way as they get older and all the conservatives will die out. No, people become more conservative as time passes. We've talked about this before. Children are Marxists. And that's actually not a bad thing, because families are where Marxism is supposed to be practiced. The problem with Karl Marx is not that he was wrong, it's that he never grew up. He tried to be a lost boy, a Peter Pan, and stay a child for all of his life. The defining characteristic of adulthood, the journey from childhood to adulthood, is you go on this journey from being fully dependent to being independent to being capable of looking after and raising other fully dependent people into independence. That's the pinnacle of adulthood, of manhood, if in the case of men, is to be able to take a child who is dependent and raise them to the point where they can become independent. And if you've done your job really well, they will then be able to go on and raise the next generation of dependents. The family is where from each according to his need, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That's where that comes from. Like, that's where that applies. That's where that's real and that's true. And so what happens is people get raised as little Marxists. And unless you've got parents who are consciously mindful of what's going on, it doesn't really get challenged as a kid, except in your in the friction of your relationship with your parents. You're not paying for my stuff. You won't let me do this, right? So then you go out on your own and you think, well, I can make it out there. I don't need my parents. But you still think that you're going to make it as a Marxist. You still think that you're going to make it as a dependent, as someone who's being given things for free. Then you get into the real world and you discover that's not how it works at all.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of the process of people growing up. So people change. People don't stay what they were all the way into their adult life. And I think it's wonderful that a lot of people now are being kicked in the head. But one of the reasons why, kicked in the head by life, because that makes them grow up. But one of the reasons why we've shifted so far left in our overall politics in the last 20, 30 years is because we're allowing people to stay children for longer. People go to university. They do a 6-year university degree, etc. I'm sorry, you're still a child. You can be 30 years of age and starting your career in academia and still be a child. You have never emerged out of the phase of life where you're able to be a dependent. And until you do, you will forever be a child. And one of the things we need to address is stopping this kind of perpetual childhood that we offer people, particularly if they choose to stay in university.
I just saw this comment here. Australians are not having children these days. Yes, you're right. Our birth rate is down. However, there is a significant shift in women, right? Women who have been sold feminism, who have been sold this, you can have it all. You can be the girl boss. You can go and, get the big job, and then you'll find the man, and then, it'll all come to you. I don't have a dog in this fight, right? Like, I don't want kids. I've never wanted kids. It was never on the cards for me. But, I'm 40 now and I'm a millennial. All of this content, I swear to God, you turn 40 and like the algorithms are like, right, it's all the shit that you've been missing. And I cannot tell you, like, this is not just one or two. This is a thing. This is a movement of women going, I did it wrong. I wish I did it the other way. I'm so unhappy. And it's like it's, like with social media, there's always a trend. And I keep seeing content from women going, I did it the way they told me. I'm miserable. I'm in my 40s. I'm alone. I'm single. And I'm sitting there going, fuck, this is like heartbreaking. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are sort of starting to go, this is not what I want. Because remember, right, we're the most liberated we've ever been, particularly women. The sexual revolution, and now you've had fourth wave feminism, where they're basically encouraging prostitution, abort your children. You can have anything you want. You can tell men to go fuck themselves. Who needs men? Because, smash the patriarchy, all this nonsense. And the women are the most unhinged and unhappy and depressed and anxious they've ever been. The more freedom and liberation they've gotten, the more they talk about, fourth wave feminism, they're miserable. I mean, you just have to look at Clem Ford. Can I just use that as an example?
Sure.
I mean, everyone knows there's no love lost between me and Clem, but she was actually quite a talented writer. I don't like what Clem talks about, by the way, but I am not someone that will go, I don't like this person, therefore I'll say they have no talent. I think Clem is clearly very intelligent and she's a good writer, but her hate this fourth wave feminism, this desire to be oppressed in every way and like so progressive and, you know, enamored with socialism, it's rotted her. And as a result, she's blown up her career. She has burnt every single bridge. Now, I don't have to like someone to be able to say, you know what, good on him. That, you know, she was an author of 3 books. She had a podcast. Like, she, you know, in all sense and purpose, she was successful. But what's happened is she's gone so far down that road of hate, and it's blown up her career. She's alienated herself from her friends. No one will touch her. No one will sponsor her. No one will give her a contract.
It's funny, it sounds a lot like Grace Tame as well. You could kind of interchange those two.
Yeah.
So I just thought people might like another drink.
Can we talk about Grace Tame 2 seconds?
If it's only 2 seconds, I'm so tired of talking about her.
No, I don't want to talk about her. But what I find so funny, but also in a way it kind of really pisses me off, is how for the last 5-6 years, I've just talked about cancel culture. The left, that was their thing. That was their MO. Yep. If someone said something on the internet they don't like, cancel them. Make sure you go and email every sponsor they have. Make sure you email all their clients they have. Make sure you get them canceled from all their gigs. That was their modus operandi. Now they're getting a taste of it and they're like, I'm being censored. This is unfair.
I'm being cancelled.
I'm being oppressed. And it's like, you don't like it, do you? It's not very nice. As someone who had that happen to me, like I still got these freaking wokies who will send stupid emails to people that I've worked with, go, do you know she's like this? Do you know she's a Trump supporter? You shouldn't work with her. And like all of my clients turn around and go, fuck off. Right? Like, I don't care.
So on the feminism issue, the fastest way to make somebody miserable is to convince them to live their life for themselves. There is nothing less worth living for than just purely 100% yourself. Now, I'm not saying you can't have nice things, enjoy things, do things for yourself along the journey. But if you are living for yourself, guess what? It's all going to die with you. You're not living for anything that is worthwhile, nothing that will last. And the purposelessness of that really weighs on people. And so feminism sold women this lie that the whole world is oriented around men. Men are getting what they want. Really? Spend some time with your typical man. You'll discover most men are not getting what they want out of life, right? But convince women that's the patriarchy. Men have it easy. They're getting what they want. You just need to go out and claim what's yours, all right? Live for yourself. It was the message. Then the second layer was they pitted women against men. And I've talked about this before. You cannot have the deepest level of bonding in any intimate relationship, or not even intimate, in any relationship, which is the shared triumph and shared trials. This is the level of bonding that goes deeper than serotonin, goes deeper than dopamine. This is your long-term bonding. This is what holds soldiers together. They will still be there for each other 30 years, 40 years, 50 years after they were in the trenches together. They could hate their guts by that point in time, be absolutely sick. He's up to no good again. He's got himself into trouble again, and they'll still show up and dig his ass out of whatever hole he's got himself into. There is a level of bonding that comes with that, whether it's footy players competing for a championship, whether it's a husband and a wife going through hell together, or achieving life goals together. It is the bonding of shared triumph and shared trial. Now, when you tell women men are the source of your problems, it's a zero-sum game. If you win, they have to lose. If they're winning, it means that you must be losing. Now you cannot share triumph. Because you win, you must have triumphed in spite of them. Now you cannot share trials. He's the cause of your problems. So now all of a sudden that layer of bonding is taken from you. So now you're empty because you're living for yourself. You can't actually bond at the deepest level with the people that are closest to you in your life. And then, unfortunately, these women fall into the very stereotypes that they hate so much, the angry feminist, right? If it was a man, you'd say he was assertive, but I'm a woman. I say, no, because men are much better at being assertive without being angry. I'm sorry, but you've made a bitter life for yourself. And when I call you what you are, you get all upset about that. He's the really, he's key to happiness, right? And I'm a human the same as everybody else. I'm working my way through life the same as everybody else. I'm not living every single day in some state of ecstasy. I'm not going to pretend that I am. But the key to happiness is to live for something bigger than you, number one, right? And my definition of masculinity, I would say, we see the Manosphere documentary, we see all this stuff going on about men and toxic masculinity, this and that. Strength in service.
Mhm.
That's masculinity. Service is key, but the kind of service that men bring is a strength-based service. The definition of femininity, softness in service.
Yeah.
Service is still the key. Understand,
Yeah.
serving others is actually the thing. If you want to be happy, go and find ways to make other people happy. That's actually going to do more for you than anything that you could do directly for yourself. But men bringing strength into that service, women bringing softness into that service, I think is actually sort of the most succinct way of understanding the roles that we each play. We're all born to serve. And feminism has taken that away from women, has said that service is subjugation. You're his slave, you're his whatever the pejorative may be. And they've literally stripped all of that out of their lives, and they wonder why they're hollow and bitter as they grow old.
Do you know what's interesting? I went and had a coffee with a girl that I just met at the gym, right? And she was telling me about, her marriage broke down, and she's single and she's back on the market, right? Got 2 kids. She's in her 40s. Yeah. And she asked me, she's like, "Oh, have you got a partner?" I said, yeah. She's like, "Oh, how did you meet him?" I said, "Actually on Bumble." And we were talking about it, and it was so interesting because she'd been married for 10 years, and then she had a short relationship, and now she's single. She said, "When you were on Bumble, did you have a bad time?" I said, "I personally did it. I mean, yes, there's not good people on there, but I was pretty ruthless. I'm like, nah, bye, not interested." But I've seen so many girls who go on there and like, I'm going to say this, and this will get clipped and used against me. They allow themselves to be traumatized. And I want to unpack this. Sure. Because women, as much as they want to be independent and, be the girl boss and all those things, they still want the Prince Charming. A woman still wants to be swept off her feet, have the guy text her first, have the guy chase her, right? Like, that's as old as time. I really do believe that's part of us inherently. Like, women like to be chased, right? Choose me kind of thing.
Yeah, pick me.
But the problem is, and like, you hear people talk about being in your masculine, being in your feminine, this kind of thing. And sure, you could take that approach. I look at it from like, well, if you're girl boss and you're in this role of like, I'm in charge, I make the decisions, and you bring that energy into the relationship, but you want him to make the decisions, there's friction there. That's not going to work.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
You have to learn to turn that off. And, I'm very much an independent woman. Before G, I did everything myself. I survived, for all those years on my own. But as soon as like he took an interest, I was like, like, yeah, okay, yeah, you can do all that. Because I didn't want to do that anymore. I like, if I have to decide what to eat for dinner one more time in my life, like, you know what I mean? But this is the problem with a lot of females. Women, sorry, not females, women who go onto these dating apps.
People, or are we using some other definition here?
No, women go onto these apps wanting one thing, but then they're at odds with what they're projecting. And I think I hate blaming social media because I feel like that's a cop out. But social media will convince you. I'll give you an example. Women will put up the most disingenuous content on social media because it knows it gets them clout, likes, comments, all that sort of stuff. But the second they get the other thing, I want to give you a good example of this. There's a podcast called Call Her Daddy. You would have heard of this, right? Yeah. Kamala Harris went on that. Biggest female podcast in the world, right? So you say, oh, who cares about this? It's the biggest podcast in the world for females, right? She's girl boss. She's like Little Miss Feminist. She came out a couple of weeks ago saying that there are only 6 men that work in her company of 100 staff, right? They're so pro-women. But you know what? Alex Cooper, the host, she's the woman that runs it. She had the fairy tale wedding. She had the Prince Charming. She promotes all this shit. Girl, you dump that man. Don't you get married. Marriage is a scam. Second, she got her Prince Charming. Guess what? She had the white dress, the big fancy wedding. Yeah. All of this is bullshit. And I think people are starting to wake up to it. And I'll give you another example. I talked about the other day, we had the Academy Awards. And all of the celebrities are now crazy skinny again. The whole heroin chic thing's back.
All the Ozempic thing, chic,
right? And I've seen a bunch of articles going out like, what does this mean for us? And I put up a reel and it's gone mega viral, which is lovely. And I said in it, I said, let's talk about it. And then I just put crickets playing. And I was like, really? We want to have this conversation again? Aren't you sick of it? And then I went on to say in that, let them. If Hollywood wants to do that, let them. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything to you. Why do you feel like you have to be influenced by people on the internet? This is an
Sure.
agency thing. Just because they're doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. And it's the same with all of these disingenuous influencers are like, I love abortion. Abby Chatfield. Oh, I love abortion. No, you don't understand. I mean, I love abortion. That woman is so clucky. She is
Yeah.
desperate to have babies with that boyfriend of hers. And it's
Yeah.
hilarious, right? Because in one thing, those two defend their relationship. Oh, we're just two people in love. We're super progressive, but we are denying the natural feelings that we have for each other, which is to come together and have babies. Like, it's
Yeah.
hilarious. But I think people are
Look,
waking up to it now.
Yeah, people. Yeah, the veneer is kind of coming off. But one of the things that's really interesting to me is that women have been convinced that they've been told that their natural desires are not what they are supposed to desire, but actually fundamentally they still desire them. Specifically what I'm talking about is women, you've been told that you can be financially independent, you can be the girl boss, you can be the head of the house, you can do all those things. But if you get married, you still want to marry someone who earns more than you. You still want to marry someone who's taller than you. And yeah, okay, you might compromise on some things, but this is kind of the internal wish list, the hardwired in your DNA wish list that women have. You want him to be stronger. If there's a bump in the night, you want him to not have to be told to go and see what it is, right? You want him to go and check the doors before you come to bed at night. There is an internal checklist of expectations that has not changed. The feminist brainwashing has not, and it cannot change that. That stuff's really hardwired in. But here's the thing. If you want a higher value man, because that's what it is, it's a high value man. If you want a high status man, you actually have to fit into his high status life. This is someone who has high expectations on himself. This is someone who has high expectations on his employees. This is probably someone who has high expectations on every piece of technology and every machine he owns. If it starts giving him trouble, it's gone out of his life. He would rather spend the money to have a new one that's reliable. Right? Guess what? The same rule applies in his relationships. If you become the source of grief and the destruction of his peace, and you become a problem in his life, here's the funny thing. Women talk a lot about standards, but what they actually mean is ego. So I have standards which I apply to you. Men, when they talk about standards, apart from the real asshole, egotistical manosphere men, they are the feminists of the male sphere.
Yeah.
We've got our feminists. It's Andrew Tate and these sorts of guys. They are the male version of feminists. So excluding them, when a man has standards, he applies it to himself. That's what makes the difference between a standard and just pure ego. Ego says, you have to treat me like this. A standard is, this is the way we treat each other, right? And so men come into relationships with standards and say, right, this is how our relationship is going to look like this. Feminism, unfortunately, has taught women to come in and say, you're going to treat me like this. And a high status man goes, hang on, that's a double standard. You've got one standard for how I treat you, but you won't reciprocate that. And guess what? That means you're a source of trouble and you're out of their life real quick. Most women are not willing to be a high status woman that a high status man would actually be looking for.
Yeah. Yep. And that's very true. Like, I mean, what's the figures? It's that 80% of the women want the top 20% of men on these
less,
dating
like
apps.
5%. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so true. They say they want all these things and then they realize they don't. But not only that, I mean, I've seen, so many content, like all those woke TikToks where it's either someone who's morbidly obese or someone who's, fringe looking, right? And I say that to be generous.
Sure.
And they're like, my man better do this and he better do that. He better realize I am the table. Like, that's the latest thing. I am the table. What do you bring to the table? I am the table. All this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and I'm like, do you really think yelling them into submission is the way to a man's heart? Do you really think like nagging him before you're even in the bloody relationship is going to pay off? But so on that manosphere thing, right? The Louis Theroux documentary. We need to watch it because we need to talk about it.
Okay, fine.
Because once again, it's a handful of the population being made to sound like it's all men are like this. And it's exhausting.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, we kind of paint with a broad brush when we talk about feminists as well. Yeah, I mean, that is kind of what people in our position, will do. But I'm mindful of the clock. Excuse me, and I want us to get to Iran. Not literally. I don't really want to travel there right now. There's a few different reasons why I'd rather stay where I am. But we need to talk about Iran. So Trump, about a day and a half ago now, came out and said Iran has to start allowing ships through the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from right now, in his bombastic style. Otherwise, he's going to destroy the electricity grid, electrical infrastructure. So civilian service, what do you call it? Utilities, infrastructure. Now, Iran has turned around and made various threats. Okay, let's not forget Iran have made threat after threat, and really they almost never have materialized. There's been a couple of thwarted attempts at a couple of things that really haven't gone all that well. Iran, back when America bombed Iran's nuclear facilities last year, the Ayatollah said that there would be a retaliation that would be remembered for generations, blah, blah, blah. Literally nothing happened. Okay, so
literally nothing.
Literally nothing. Yeah. Now, this time around, it wasn't literally nothing, but it was literally very, very little that's happened so far. So I don't think we have to be too worried about the threats of retaliation from the Iranians at this point in time. But putting a hard deadline on a specific action is a double-edged sword, because yes, it puts the person you're talking to under pressure to do the thing, but it holds you accountable, and you get called out as a coward or as a fraud if you don't then uphold the threat that you've made. And this is really difficult in the context of an Iran where there are widespread and growing protests happening in the streets of Iran. Increasingly, the Basij are not able to put those protests down. They're having to kind of coexist with the protests at the moment. Not to say that there's no violence, but there isn't this kind of walk out and start shooting protesters that we saw a month or so ago. We're watching a situation where Iranians are deliberately doxing Basij. So what the Basij would do is they would gather at their various little outposts, and they were getting hit by drones. So what they did was they moved under the bridges. Well, they can get the drones under the bridges. So what they did was they turned them into checkpoints, and they would be stopping traffic. And the idea was to try and make sure that at any given moment in time, there were lots of other civilians around, so the Americans couldn't shoot them. Well, the Americans are kind of shooting them anyway. And the Israelis are kind of shooting them anyway. And so now we've got hilarious videos coming out showing people in apartment buildings or people in cars will drive past with their windows down, playing the sound of a drone, that high-pitched, and you watch these people all start looking around and heading for cover, and the paranoia is very, very real. But does that mean they're close to collapse? I don't know. No one. No, I mean, maybe there's a handful of people in the world that actually have enough information to be able to answer that question. But neither you nor I has an answer to that question. And so if Iran don't allow these tankers through the Straits of Hormuz, which they won't, then Trump is obliged to start hitting civilian Iranian infrastructure. And that's going to affect, obviously, the quality of life of the very people who are Trump's best allies in this fight. Now, it hasn't quite happened yet, but the idea is sooner or later, the regime will be weakened to the point that the people will rise up. Well, who's he hurting by cutting off the electricity? The people that he wants to rise up, their phones, their communication devices, their ability to coordinate with each other, their ability to get information out to the outside world. Like, how is this helping? I don't understand this ploy from Donald Trump. I don't think there's an upside to it here.
And I think as well with Iranians, can I just say to the Iranians, anyone that's watching, I am so freaking enthralled by the way Iranians are swatting all the progressive lefties. Like all of these lefties who get up there and, what about Gaza and war and la la la? They're saying all their nonsense. And the Iranians are like, shut the fuck up. Like, you know nothing. You know nothing. The problem is the Jewish community should have been doing that. They weren't as outwardly doing that. I mean, yes, there was definitely some people doing it, but Iranians, they have a level of don't give a fuck that is just so enviable. It's like the amount of content that's going out there, just straight away whacking them down as soon as any of these tapes come out. Like all of these progressive left-leaning websites that will put up a story. The Iranians are onto it. Like, no, that's not true. This is bullshit. This is propaganda. This is not true. The thing that's unusual about what's going on in Iran is typically I'm not saying I'm yay or nay for the war, but with Iraq, for example, you had most people on the American side. Like most of the West were like, Yes. Okay. Because you convinced us weapons of mass destruction, 9/11. Most people were sort of like, okay, this is a good thing. Whereas this time you have a lot of people in the West who are like, no, we don't want this. We don't want another interventionist war. But the difference this time is Iranians are on the side of the US. Iranians are on the side of Israel. So the West, like a lot of people saying we don't want this war. And it doesn't matter if they're MAGA or they're left. A lot of people saying, no, we don't want intervention. The Iranians like, bring it. We want this. That's unusual. That's not what normally happens.
Yeah.
The civilians are on our side. So
I still think it would be a terrible, terrible mistake for America to put boots on the ground.
I agree.
Let's not forget that the Shah, who the Ayatollah, with the help of the Marxists, etc., overthrew, was installed by the Americans, and the British. And that was all about the oil. And this is still all about the oil. Nothing's really changed in that regard. I think it would be I would love to see the Iranians be free of the Ayatollahs. I have Iranian friends who've told me about what life is like back there now, from the people that they still know back there, and what life was like under the Shah. They long for their country to be free of the current regime, but for that to happen in the form of just another US installed puppet regime, unfortunately, we've watched this movie before. Iran 1.0, Iraq 1 and 2.0, Afghanistan, Syria, and a whole host of others. It just, with the exception of the Panama Canal and the US intervention in Panama, I've looked, and as best as I can tell, the US intervention in Panama is the only one in all of US military history that has led to a long-term stable democracy. One. Yeah. They have a success rate of 1 out of all of the interventions they've done. So I think this has got to be a situation where ultimately the Iranians take matters into their own hands. I think it has to be that way. And it would be a terrible, horrible mistake for Trump to send in the Marines or any such thing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. The one thing I will say about all of the wars previous to this, and I'm not trying to put Trump on a pedestal. I feel like I understand the kind of person Trump is. Prior to that, George W. Bush, Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, even Reagan and Jimmy Carter, they were all part of the swamp, right? These are people who have been in politics a really long time. They're all part of the lobbyist crew. They're all career politicians. Trump is the exception for a couple of reasons. One, he is an egotist, and that's what's so kind of endearing about it, because I've said this 100 times. This is a legacy play for Trump. Trump is trying to reconfigure the entire geopolitical landscape. And this is different because this isn't a bunch of advisors around Obama who all have their claws in Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and all that. Not to say that there aren't some. Of course there are. I'm not being naive. But ultimately, Trump is his own man. And yes, he has his advisors. And we saw Trump 1.0 was very disappointing. This time around, I think there's some real gravitas to a lot of these decisions. And where I get frustrated is people making blanket assumptions. Comparing Iran to Iraq is bullshit. It's completely uncomparable. One, you've got a hostile regime. Yes, American intervention is what resulted in it being the Islamic Revolution, but you have 93 million people, most of which hate their government and are asking for intervention. They're all singing Trump's praises. That deserves to be held in high regard. This is not I get so angry when Westerners constantly feel like they get to dictate and they decide what happens in the Middle East. We said this when we had Dibber on, whether it's the people who are who are pro-Trump but anti the war, or it's the people who are anti-Trump and also anti the war. What you have is this privileged Westerner weighing in on situations on the other side of the world based on previous governments who have made these decisions. This is different this time.
Can I make the point, though, that we, the West, the British Empire specifically, drew the lines on the map that define the countries in the Middle East right now, the British Mandate.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't think those lines were necessarily put in the right places. Now, what's been interesting to me is we've had the Kurds, which are the Kurdish people are kind of divided up between 4 different countries.
Yeah.
They were a group that probably should have had their own, there should have been a Kurdistan under the British Mandate, but they didn't. They kind of cut them up into 4 different countries: Iran, Iraq, Syria, and I want to say Turkey, but I actually don't know my geography well enough. There's a 4th country that has a lot of Kurds in it as well. And so the Kurds have previously been listed as terrorist organizations, and, you know, separatists and rebels and this and that. Now, all of a sudden, they're our friends because they're in Western Iran and they're opposed to the regime. And they've come out saying that they're not interested in separating Iran. They're not interested in fighting for an autonomous zone for Kurds. They want a free Iran, which is very, very encouraging. But I can't help but again say, well, hang on, you know, we had the Mujahideen on our side, and we equipped, when I say we, the CIA, the US with the CIA, equipped and armed and trained Osama bin Laden, gave him Stinger missiles with which to shoot down the Russian Hind helicopters. And that was the right thing for us to do during the Russian occupation of Afghanistan in the 1980s. Well, have a look at how that whole, you know, clusterfuck has worked out for us. So I hear what you're saying, and my gut says, yes, you're absolutely right. But I also know that my gut would have said all of these other people were right throughout history, even though they turned out to be so clearly wrong. Now, I want to touch on a couple of objectives.
Can I just bring back?
Yeah.
Can I just finish that out?
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. I understand the trepidation, but Trump is like unlike any politician we've ever had before. He's not comparable to anyone.
I agree, but this isn't, you know, he's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. No.
The difference is everyone from the deep state hates Trump. Remember that. So all of the people who had their greedy paws in Afghanistan, in Iraq, they're the ones that have been trying to put Trump behind bars.
But that doesn't magically mean that he can actually achieve through military interventions geopolitical outcomes like this.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't guarantee it. But I think it adds a little bit more. It differentiates him from previous governments.
It's like a brain surgeon trying to fix somebody with a hammer, and you're going, oh, no, it's different. The surgeon's so much better. Yeah, he's still using a hammer on someone's brain. Like, is this even the right tool for the job? That's more where I'm coming at it from. Now, there's a few people that have taken exception to me saying that Panama are the only stable democracy to have emerged out of US intervention. I should have said US regime change, not intervention. So I will correct myself there. Ben Frail has said, what about Japan? Well, okay, Second World War, slightly different kettle of fish. So after the Second World War, and regime change, Ben Frail says Vietnam is pretty stable too. America lost there. America withdrew. So that's not really a consequence of American success and regime change. They failed to change the regime.
Can I just say on Vietnam, everyone talks about it being communist, which it is to a degree, but it's the most corrupt, pro-capitalist communist country.
Yeah. I've got someone wanting to say South Korea. That wasn't regime change. That was South Korea. They literally went in against an invasion coming in from the north, and they secured South Korea for the existing South Koreans. Nate says Venezuela, way too early to say. That's and so there are people who want to kind of push back on that, but I think I'm standing on pretty firm ground here. Whenever, you know, Japan, South Korea, Germany, okay, Second World War, slightly different situation. South Korea, not applicable. Vietnam, not applicable. No, I think I'm on pretty firm ground here to say that the only regime change operation that the US has undertaken in the post-World War II era, let's just draw a line under it there, in the last 70, 80 odd years, the only one that's actually led to a long-term stable democracy was Panama. Every other one has quickly fallen apart again. And, you know, there's that thing about those who do not learn from history.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I like to zoom out a little bit further than just the last 100 years, because if anything, this is just history repeating itself over and over. It's always been about wars. It's always been about terrain. It's always been about wealth. I mean, oil's a fairly new player in the global war thing. Oil's only been around for what, 200 years or something, as far as it being valuable. So when it comes to human history, I mean, people forget what the Persian Empire did, what the Ottoman Empire did, what the what the Germans did, what Genghis Khan did. I mean, this is just humans humaning. You know, the mechanism's different, but the story's the same.
Yeah, it is. I mean, someone just made a comment there about Cyrus. Cyrus was the one who authorized the Jewish people to go back and rebuild their temple, rebuild their walls, and actually gave them materials to do that. Was that Jeremiah? Was that Jeremiah? Anyway, so why am I asking you? Anyway, so there is long history and not all hostile history. I mean, yes, the Persians held the Jewish people hostage as slaves for a very long period of time, as was the habit back then. That wasn't anything unusual. But I would love to believe that it's different this time. I really would. I'm not sitting here hoping for anything to get any worse. I think the best thing that could happen here would be for the Iranian regime to crumble, for the Iranian people to be able to chart their own way forward. I think Reza Pahlavi, I'll get his name wrong, the former king or the son of the Shah, as an interim leader, I think makes sense. But I would hope that he would immediately take the country to elections. Might take 2 years or so to kind of put everything in place, and then that he would be remembered and his legacy would be as the man who handed Iran back to the Iranian people. And that would be fantastic. And I think as a people group, they have a very real opportunity. They have the very real ability to actually sustain a functioning democracy. They have done so in their past. But how we get there matters, because if we get there the wrong way, then we sow the seeds for the collapse.
Yeah, I understand that. But I think my frustration with this whole Iran situation and just Trump in general is that social media, people will see something that sounds somewhat convincing and just take it as fact, right? They'll just read something verbatim and go, yeah, that's it. That's the story. And the fracturing we're seeing on the right, as well as all the fracturing that happened on the left, it's always disingenuous. Like it's the truth gets around the world halfway before the lie gets around the world halfway before the truth gets its pants on. And at the moment with Iran, what's it been, 3 weeks, 4 weeks tops since this has all started happening?
3.5 weeks. Yeah, 3.5 weeks.
Everyone is so confident they know how this is going to work out. Everyone is so confident. And it's that whole, Dunning-Kruger thing. People are talking about geopolitics like that they're in the war room, and it's ridiculous. I only know what I know from either social media, Trump's social, or the mainstream media. I'm not in Iran. I'm not seeing it with my own eyes. I don't know if it's AI or if it's not. I don't know what's actually happening. I don't know if Netanyahu's actually alive or he's dead. But people argue like this. And I just think we expend so much unnecessary energy talking about things with such conviction that we actually know fuck all about. And when it comes to this war, I sit from the camp of I'll let it play out. Like I'm happy to let it play out. I don't know what's going to happen. And I like to think it's different. But I think this whole hoo-ha online of everyone just going, this is bullshit, it's Iraq 2.0, blah, blah, blah. Can we just let it play out? Can we let the Iranians talk about their country?
It's definitely not Iraq 2.0 yet, because there are no boots on the ground, and that is a very, very important distinction. So it's not Iraq 2.0 at this point in time. I would like it to stay that way, not Iraq 2.0. This is a perspective here by Tony Wong. All that Iran needs to maintain is the mere presence of a threat to ships crossing the Strait of Hormuz, which is surrounded by 270 degrees of mountainous high ground, impossible to win here. So you're right, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. And so I was wrong to believe that tankers would already be passing through. So you may remember a couple of weeks ago when all this kind of kicked off, I talked about the Shenlong. There was a tanker, it was a Greek-operated tanker that was taking oil from Saudi Arabia, actually bound for China. And they passed through the Straits by turning off their AIS system, didn't turn it back on until they'd nearly reached India. Now, my prediction was that having watched a few tankers, because they were the first, but they weren't the only one. Having watched a few tankers go through, that other companies would start to say, well, hang on, we can't afford not to. We can't afford not to be transporting this. That proved to not be the case. So by and large, the shipping has not resumed. There has been a dribble. It's mostly Saudi oil bound for China. And obviously the Iranians are giving that a pass. They're letting that go through. When others did try and go through, they did get hit. So Tony's point is quite correct. Strategically and tactically, this is a really difficult piece of water. It is reasonably wide, but certainly the missiles and the drone capabilities that the Iranians have are able to go that far. But also, the surveillance that America now has is phenomenal. And so, for example, we just found out in the most recent report from the US commander of the forces in that region, they've recently carried out a series of bombing raids, destroying entrances to and destroying underground munitions depots where they had a lot of these anti-ship missiles and launch platforms and these sorts of things, which is what they were using to harass these ships and what they were using to maintain this threat. And so there is a bit of a getting the threat down to zero would be almost impossible. But I don't think it has to get down to zero. I think we need to see some more degradation of the Iranian capability. And then we need to see the US literally just parking missile destroyers in the Straits, which they're not willing to do at the moment.
This comment here from Channel Master, I listened to a guy, he does a lot of research on the Iran war, and the US isn't doing as good as some are making out. Many radars destroyed, running low on missiles, and Israel's been hammered. Okay, a couple of things. Who's the dude? Like, who's the guy, right? This is the problem with online influencers and online YouTube channels. I mean, Topher and I are no different. I'm not saying that we're better. Is that people can sound really credible, like I know, unless this person works at the Pentagon and has clearance. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's bullshit. You don't know. You don't know. How many videos have come up around Iran in the last 2 weeks where it's like that fighter jet escaping the missile? Turns out it's from a video game. Oh, you know, they were bombing like shadows of jets and they weren't real jets. This is called a propaganda war. Half of the stuff that you think that you know is based on utter bullshit, and it's been leaked or fed or whatever. And a lot of this, you got to understand people's intentions for leaking information. Usually it's to manipulate the market. Hey, you know what? Go say this. All of a sudden stocks over here will go through the roof. And so, like, the reason I'm not saying that this person doesn't know what they're talking about. It's like, just be a little bit more skeptical. Underestimating the US military is ridiculous. They have the biggest military on the planet. They have weapons and munitions to outlast everyone else, right? I'm not saying because I'm pro-war or anything like that. Like, underestimating the US is ridiculous. I think, I mean, everyone talks about nukes. Trump's not going to be the one to press the nuke. It's not in his wheelhouse. He's not going to do that. Putin would have done it by now if he wanted to. No one wants to be known as the person who pressed the big red button when it comes to the nukes. But when it comes to the other stuff, the US plans has obsolete radar detection stuff for a reason. They plan to use the stuff that once it gets destroyed, they don't care. That's the whole point. That's their whole military MO. And I think, like, I'm not sitting here saying I understand, but it would be a gross underestimation to think that any of the propaganda coming out from the left or the right is right now. I think it's way too early. Half of this stuff isn't even getting out of the country because of the fact the internet's not on or it's intermittent. I'm just saying, let's not get caught up on stuff that you think is fact when it's probably bullshit.
So there's a couple of interesting things that we can kind of use to ballpark. A lot of people think that things can be covered up way better than what they actually can be. These days, the civilian intelligence capability is so far beyond what even military intelligence capability was 30 years ago. We've got cameras everywhere. Information can be shared around the world almost instantly. You start seeing, F-35s being lost over enemy territory. We start seeing hostages being taken and held by the Iranian regime because they parachuted out over Iranian territory. These sorts of things, I'll start to believe you a little bit more because there's no way a lid stays on that. There's no way that someone from the IRGC doesn't take a video on their cell phone. Look at this American dog I got and send it to his wife to try and make sure he gets laid that night. And then it goes from there around the world. Like, there is no way that this stuff doesn't get out. So
can I just touch on something quickly? It was like the Iranian propaganda that came out of them catching the stealth bomber. They're like, oh, we caught one, we shot it down. And then there's footage of them standing next to the wing. This thing's the length of 2 football fields, and they're standing beside it like huge, looking like they're standing next to the thing. And then the other thing is they've got footage of it going under a bridge. This thing ain't going under a bridge. Like, and this is the stuff, right? Like, because that propaganda was everywhere. I saw everyone sharing that. They're like, oh my God, they got one of the, what's it called? The stealth thing? What's it called? The B something or other?
Well, so there's a couple of them. There's the B2 is your that's the one that looks like it's out of the movie Pixels.
Yeah, the fancy. Yeah, that's one. They're like, oh, we shot one down. We've got one. It's like but the thing is, the reason I bring this up, right? To your average person, you wouldn't know how big this thing is. You wouldn't have any context for it. I just happen to know because of aviation geeks in my vicinity. But like the average person will see that and go, "Oh shit, okay, that must be true." And that's the war we're in. It's an information war as well.
So let's also keep in mind how many hundreds of these things do the US have? In war, you expect to lose equipment. Yeah, that we know about. In war, you expect to lose equipment. That's a given. That's a given. We are so coddled now that our idea of war is that it's a tragedy that a US tanker went down and the 6 crew were killed. Well, that is a tragedy for their families, absolutely, 100%. But like 10 minutes on the front lines of Ukraine will kill 6 people, right? Like there's hundreds of people dying every day still. So we've got this situation where we had this really skewed perspective. Oh no, a couple of F-35s were damaged and the pilots were able to land the planes. America isn't doing as well as we thought. I'm sorry, excuse me. The fact is the Chinese manufactured multi-layered defense in depth radar and missile system completely and utterly failed. They have not shot down a single. So we've got F-16s operating over Iran right now. Do you know how old the F-16s are? They are like early 4th gen, or arguably 3.5th gen fighters with old school everything. And they're able to operate over Iran right now, along with obviously F-35s doing higher risk missions using their stealth capabilities, F-15s using their longer range weaponry, their standoff capability. The only aircraft actually lost were the 3 F-15s that were shot down by American F-16s, I think it was, flown by the Q-80 Defense Force, if my memory serves me correctly, not shot down by Iran. The tanker that went down is due to a mid-air refueling incident. And yes, a couple of F-35s have been damaged in combat now. All right. This is 3.5 weeks into the war. The Iranian missile system is gone. All of their radars are gone. The Americans are operating with impunity. I'm sorry, if someone wants to try and tell me that 2 damaged aircraft changes everything, then I'm going to say that they're probably click harvesting. They're just trying to get eyeballs with fantastic headlines so they can get paid by the internet.
The only propaganda I think that people should watch, and the reason I say it's propaganda is like there is no way this YouTube channel is not sponsored in some way by Pete Hegseth. So it's this young kid who does all these sort of really cool up close YouTube videos around some of the big military equipment. And he just did one in the F-18. He got to go for a flight in it, and he's showing like, you know, the refueling jets and all that sort of stuff. I call this propaganda because this guy needs serious clearance to go into these planes. Like this is not some regular Joe Schmo YouTuber. This is very carefully done by the American military, I guess. And I'd say it's to recruit new people into the military. That's why I think they're doing it. But you go and look at the capability of some of these. Like you go and have a look at what's it called? USS Abraham Lincoln, the nuclear. What's it called? The it's a bloody aircraft carrier. They've got 6 of them, don't they? These things are floating.
I thought they had 9 carrier fleets, but that's been a while since I've looked that up.
I can't remember. They've got 9. I think the rest of the world collectively has like 6 or something. I can't remember the exact stats, but
11 nuclear powered aircraft carriers. There you go. We were both 11. Wrong.
And how many does the rest of the world have?
Combined,
I think Russia had 1.
Yeah, I mean, you know, France has had 1. China have, you know, there's bits and bobs out there, but nothing. Nothing on that. These guys
are in a league of their own. Like, do you know? And you know, someone just wrote America, fuck yeah. Like, has no one seen Maverick, Top Gun Maverick? Come on, like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, when I see comments like that going, oh, the US is actually losing. Like, guys, put your big brain in. Let's use our big brains today. Come on. I'm not saying Trump's the best. I'm not saying that America's the best. I'm saying like underestimating the US military is a silly mistake. That's a rookie error.
Yeah. All right.
There we go. So we've got 9 Nimitz class and 2. Hang on, what was that?
Nimitz. Yeah. 9 Nimitz class and 2 of the other ones. 2 Gerald Ford.
I don't know. Is that nuclear and I don't know.
They're different, essentially different designs of ship, 2 different classes of ship. Yeah.
In Santa Monica, you can go on the, what's it called? It's the Midway. No, it's not the Midway. Is it the Midway? Yeah. It's an old carrier from the 60s. It's
Okay.
permanently docked there, and on there's like the F-14 and all that sort of stuff. This thing's an old one. It's the US Midway, I think. And the size of that and what that thing was capable of back, 60, 70 years ago compared to the nuclear ones we have today, it's just like
Look, two US carrier groups would be enough to completely obliterate most countries' defensive capabilities. Obviously, you can't launch an invasion without boots on the ground, but in terms of just gaining air superiority and taking over the airways over a country, two US carrier groups, maybe with some ground support for some long-range tankers and a bit of that sort of stuff, that's all it takes. And it's the people don't understand the technology gap. China deployed their absolute best to Iran. So Iran got a bunch of upgraded stuff after the 12-day war, which is the middle of last year. They went back to China because their defenses completely failed, didn't even see the bombers coming. The bombers just dropped their bunker busters into the Iranian nuclear facilities. That was that. Thank you very much. They flew home again, didn't even have to land anywhere outside of the US. They took off from and landed back in the US, having dropped their bombs, and the Iranians never knew they were there until the bombs detonated. And that's not supposed to happen. They were supposed to have hardware from China that was meant to protect from that. So they then brought in the absolute latest Chinese stuff, which China had wanted to reserve for itself, but was now kind of bullied into selling because it was going to look bad on the global stage if their stuff failed that hard and then they didn't support their buyer, because they've got a bunch of other countries that also buy their stuff. The aircraft that was it the Chengdu J-16, whatever, bought by a couple of countries, Pakistan being one of them. They're suing the Chinese now. Everyone wants out of these contracts. Everyone that's actually now using this Chinese hardware is like, this is not fit for purpose. This doesn't do what you said on the tin that it would do.
Yeah.
These radars that were supposed to be able to detect F-35s and B-2s from a couple of 100 kilometers away, never saw them. By the way, they were using the same ones in Venezuela that couldn't even, by the time the Americans were done jamming them, they couldn't even see helicopters. Do you have any idea how big the radar signature of a helicopter is? It is enormous. This thing looks like an aircraft carrier to a radar system. The Chinese air defense systems could not see, let alone target, helicopters by the time the E-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft had done their thing. The level of technological gap has been exposed, and people, China has been bullshitting for a long time, and a lot of people have bought the bullshit. Well, I'm sorry, we just had a real world test, and 2 damaged F-35s doth not a functional defensive system make.
Yeah. This is the thing. I mean, I only know like a snippet of information about the US military and its aviation stuff. I'm no expert, guys, but like, yeah, I think that would be a gross underestimation to think that the US military is not going to win. Having said that, I hope they don't, right? Like, I don't want it to be an all-out war. I never want to see World War III, all that sort of stuff. But knowing the tip of the iceberg of what we know about the US military, I'm just saying, like, I don't want them to do it, but that they're not the biggest for no reason. The other thing is too, with all this sort of stuff, part of it is the war could be over very quickly if they wanted it to. I mean, they're trying to negotiate. They're trying to come up some solution. But I think with Trump's ultimatum, I mean, we saw this when he negotiated with North Korea. Like, he's just about crazy enough to do it,
Oh yeah. Let's not forget he set foot in North Korea. In North Korean territory, and his security details stayed in South Korea. So I mean, that's a trust fall. This is a great question. I appreciate this question. Demetra beats 7551. Topher, how would you attempt to open the Straits of Hormuz? Fantastic question. I'm glad you asked. So first thing I would do is have a third carrier group come in to the region to much fanfare and tell everybody 2 weeks in advance that this carrier group is going to enter through and pass through and transit the Straits of Hormuz. Now, what this is going to do is cause the Iranians, whatever level of coordination they have left, they are going to try and get every freaking asset they have down into a position where it can fire. Now, Iran is an incredibly inhospitable country. Moving around is very, very difficult. It requires being vulnerable and exposed for long periods of time. So, of course, the US have the surveillance capability between satellites and loitering drones and all the rest of it to be able to observe anything that moves. Anything that moves gets added to a target list. Now, you can either take it out. If it's a real threat to your ships, take it out the moment it becomes visible. If it's not so much of a real threat, leave it be. See where they get gathered. Let them expose their hiding places, because there's going to be some good hiding places. Nice big cave systems, all the rest of it. So you watch them. It's a little bit like observing a drug trafficking operation. You don't want to grab everybody the minute they step out their front door. You want to see where they go. Let them lead you to the next step. Then, having gotten all of that intel, you spend a good, I don't know, probably $500 million over the course of 2 days, dropping in all manner of ordnance into every single place of interest that has been revealed by those observations as you've baited them into revealing their locations and positions. And then you sail your damn carrier fleet through, because there are frigates and anti-missile boats and all kinds of other vessels that go along with those aircraft carriers. You can have your Growler and electronic warfare aircraft up there confusing and disguising any kind of weapons systems that's trying to get a lock on anything. You've got your F-35s flying top cover. You've got your F-15s keeping the airspace secure around your perimeter. You fly through with a country's worth of military coming off the top, the flat top of a single aircraft carrier. And having identified and taken out all of the serious missile threats, your anti-missile frigates and defensive net can deal with the rest. We see that all the time. The biggest risk to the American missile defense systems is that they run out of ammunition. Their ammunition is relatively expensive, okay? But if this is this is why you get a fresh carrier group. You get a fresh carrier group fully stocked up, fully loaded, coming in off the back of a massive aerial campaign over the preceding 48 hours, taking out the majority of the threats. They will sail through probably without incident and almost certainly without damage one way. And then you turn around, you come back the other way, and you perhaps leave some missile frigates behind and what have you, and you say, waterways secured. And then you lean on the City of London to restore insurance and get the ships moving again. That's how I would personally do it. And I think that would suit Donald Trump's grandiose style right down to the ground. It would make a statement that the rest of the world would sit up and pay attention, but the lead time is crucial. You have to give them that 2-week warning so that they reveal most of their, that is a bait that they will not be able to refuse. They will try and move assets into position. And that's how you discover not only the assets being moved, but that's how you discover the caches of where the assets are that are already in place.
I'm just reading some of the comments in the chat, and there was one there like, why aren't they already doing things now? Guys, I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. Just because you can't see it, just because it's not being reported on the news, doesn't mean things aren't happening. You know, a lot of this stuff is happening behind closed doors in rooms that you and I will never be privy to. Again, you know, we don't find out until it's happened. If Trump has a plan, he's not going to go on the news and go, this is the plan. Like, you know, I don't know why people feel like they should be brought along for the play-by-play. That's never going to be how it happens. ZRG22 has said our opinions are retarded. Then, dude, why are you wasting your time? Like, you can go. The door's open.
Do you know anything about Elon's announcement?
Do I know anything about Elon's announcement?
No.
This has happened recently. I have to tell you guys, I have taken a break off X. I have taken a break off X because it just got, I don't like the fighting. I think the fighting is really boring. So long as everyone's arguing on X, I am not on it.
Is it they're paying for the TSA one?
What is it?
I don't know enough. I mean, this is terrorist stuff.
Paying the salaries of TSA personnel during the funding impasse that is negatively affecting the lives of so many Americans. Yes.
Don't know enough about it. Sorry, can't comment. But that is kind of the boss move that that Elon would make.
Yeah.
All right. We need to wind up. I'm sweating like mad. My studio is overheating, and I would like to get some sleep.
Always a gross overshare from you at the end of the podcast.
Oh, no, you want a gross overshare? I'll stand up and show you where I'm sweaty.
No.
I'm just telling you, be grateful that my overshare was only what it was.
All 1,400 people watching right now do not need to be traumatized.
There's about 1,000 of them just logged off preemptively.
I feel like
yeah.
do you want to
I'm out of here.
Do you want to wrap us up? Do you want to grift? guys, Ko-fi,
Yeah,
if
look,
you like the show,
got-
if you want to support the show, here is how you support the show. You sign up here. You
Yeah.
can be a producer. You can tell us what you want us to talk about on the channel. Please share the show. Tell people to watch the show. Tell people all about it. That'd be great.
This is the topherfield.com store. This is where you're going to find my books, my DVDs, all my T-shirts, my hoodies. You're also going to find the Getting Your Head in the Game Masterclass, which we have forgotten to put up to its full price. So it is temporarily still on the early bird special. So do get onto that quickly. Oh, Carly, can we take down the Oddcast first birthday tickets, please?
Why is that still up there?
Yeah. Unfortunately, this
your
cap is sold.
Slack.
Carly, let's have a little production meeting right
Hang
now.
It says sold out, just so you can see there. It says sold out.
Yeah, but when are we getting more of these in? Have we ordered them?
No, should we? We can.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're a great cap. Let's get those back. But guys, this is all my stuff. This is what helps to keep both me and Carly in our homes and paying bills and landlords and all the rest of it. So if there's something there that you like the look of, please do head over to topherfield.com and grab it. That will help me to keep on doing what I do and Carly to keep on doing what she does.
Joe has asked us why we haven't shared his super chats. I apologize, Joe. I didn't see them. Okay, Carlz, I get you. But
there's a bunch of come in. Sorry.
Sorry, guys. We'll go through supers and then we'll wrap up. We can't look at the concept of when flight staff tell you to turn it on your own oxygen mask before you help anyone else. Sorry, Joe. I don't understand what you mean by that.
No, this was quite early on. I remember seeing this one pop up and we never got to it. This was early on. We were talking about kind of that self-sufficiency thing. I think this is when we're talking a bit about cost of living and all of that stuff. And I don't remember the specific point that you were making, but look, I think, Joe, you're absolutely correct. And none of us can be prepared on behalf of everybody else. We can only be prepared on behalf of ourselves and our loved ones. But if everybody did that, then we would all be prepared. And of course, not everybody will, but we can. And so I agree. I think we need to look after ourselves, and that's at a national level as well. Australia should be looking after Australia's defence, Australia's food security, Australia's energy security, etc. But also at an individual level, at a family level, at a community level, we should be looking after our own backyards a lot more than what we do.
This is something I'm really passionate about, is helping people reclaim agency. And I've said this before, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but this is kind of like the whole undertow of all of my socials content is helping people reclaim agency. And I think, honestly, people just forget. I mean, we've just gone through the progressive era where you blame everything external to yourself for your misfortune. You know, everyone else's fault that you're traumatized, everyone else's fault that you're hard done by. And I think the solution is to help people recognize that you actually have the power, which is, I mean, this is kind of what Topher talks about in the masterclass. But I think people have been so disempowered for so long, they don't realize they have the agency to opt out. So, yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing that. But I want to go through a couple more super chats.
So Tiger's Bite here. Our mutual mate Mez said that we should chat. We share some conservative views. I'm the other Aussie in Gays Against Groomers with Celine Baumgarten. Also, hi, Topher. Hi, I don't think we've met, but hi. Celine's been on my show a few times. She's done some amazing work under incredible pressure. She got sued for daring to question a trans-friendly space in a primary school, if my memory serves me correctly. It was like a trans club for like 8-9-year-olds kind of deal. Yeah. And she queried it, and she ended up being sued. She stood her ground. She's won multiple times against the government now, and she had a kid along the way. And yeah, she's come on the Topher Project a couple of times. So it looks like at Tiger's Bite, you should probably send a message to one of Carlz's socials and chat that way.
Mez is someone who's known me probably the longest. Mez and I used to work together at Supre back when I used to manage Supre back in my uni days.
Supre stays at Supre. Okay, we don't want to know.
Absolutely, we don't talk about that. What else have we got? Both sides of the species,
Topher, need to understand that each have pre-built advantages, but more importantly, weaknesses. For what you do comes at a cost. Absolutely. And to recognize that it's not a zero-sum game, that a woman becoming more successful, wealthier, happier, whatever, doesn't come at the expense of a man becoming poorer or unhappier. We've got this zero-sum thinking that's come into our culture with the whole men versus women thing. And actually, we can all rise together. But yes, we have to recognize that we're not the same. And that's actually a good thing.
We've got one from Baz at the opening of the show. Hail Queen Pauline, our Orange Empress. The rise of the rare cannot be stopped. I love how memeable this is too. I love it. Like you guys would have seen all the thumbnails I'm doing for Topher in the show. I'm just having so much fun. It's just making fun content.
But it is brilliant watching the level of denial. And we saw some of that in the comments, even during this show. We saw it in the aftermath on Sunday and Monday today, after the election on the weekend in South Australia. People wanting to dismiss it, minimize it, say that it doesn't mean anything. No, there is a massive, massive seismic shift underway, the like of which we haven't seen. Again, I keep on saying it. We haven't seen this since the sexual revolution of the 1960s.
Huge. Never seen before.
It's huge. Yeah, it is. It is massive.
What else? In regards to Albo's mosque visit, you give him too much credit. He'll learn nothing from it, and he will change nothing, just like Starmer. I don't disagree with you, Noel, but I'm not worried about changing Albo. These people won't change. Starmer won't change. These people are bona fide socialists. They'll never admit that they're wrong.
Yeah.
What I'm buoyed by is the reaction of the public. That's what I get excited by.
Yeah. All right,
we
Carlz,
don't
this is
want
for you.
Albo to learn. Let me ask you a question, Carlz, if you don't mind. If you were the POTUS, what would you do? I agree Trump V1 was terrible, but version 2 is listening to the people to a better degree than AU. What would I do? I mean, to be honest, like I can't answer that question in the honest way that you want. I'm not privy to the information that these people have. I mean, based on what I know and what I assert. Look, I'll tell you this for free. If I was the president of the United States, I'd make sure that the US was still number one. They were the global powerhouse. You know, a lot of people are anti-America being the world police, but who better? Like, honestly, I that's what I'd do. And if I was Donald Trump, right, and I'm an American citizen, yeah, I want my country to be the biggest the biggest and baddest and the meanest on the planet. Of course.
Yeah.
Like what person wouldn't be putting America first? And America first means making sure that your resources are like indestructible. It'd be making sure that you have the strongest military. It'd be making sure that people understand that you are not to be fucked with. It'd be negotiating like he is right now. But also, I mean, there's a part of this that would be, you know, making it more affordable for Americans to live and things like that. I think Trump is trying to do too much at the same time, but also he's aware midterms are coming up. And I think that's why he's working at such a blistering pace. But I mean, I hope that answers your question. I would be putting America first.
The only thing I would add to that is that the greatest national security risk to the US right now is their own debt. One of the reasons why America has to protect the role of the US dollar as the petrodollar as jealously as they do is because ultimately what that does de facto at a market level is mean that the US dollar is backed by all of the world's known oil reserves and gas reserves. It becomes a crutch that the US can prop up its own dollar despite their money printing. And if they lose hegemony, if BRICS were to be successful in normalizing trade in energy outside of the US dollar, which they were doing, that was already partway underway. If that had become normative, then the value of the US dollar would have declined sharply because it becomes less about, well, this is the petrodollar, this is the global reserve currency. No, it's not anymore. Now, what's it really actually worth as the American dollar? Well, they're trillions of dollars in debt and they're not going to get out anytime soon. So maybe it's not worth so much. So the debt is the elephant in the room national security risk to the US right now. If I were Trump, the main difference between me and the Trump 2.0 that we're watching is that I would have Javier Milei'd the crap out of the US government. Instant entire department shutdowns, in massive welfare programs being eradicated, massive corporate welfare being eliminated. Just a savage chainsaw approach is what I would have done. But then again, I'm not there. So
and I think that, like, I'm just reading some of the comments. You know, everyone has their opinions, but again, a lot of these opinions are based on very limited information. You know, we don't know half the stuff that goes on. We don't know what the threats are. I'm not trying to defend. I'm just saying, like, you know, it's impossible for me to make a decision on something unless I have all the information in front of me. Otherwise, I'm just speculating, you know.
All right, a couple more, and then we've got to finish. Tony, you're correct. Iraq is 1/3 the size of Iran with non-defensible borders. Iran's borders are mountainous or swamps. The USA is retreating from Camp Victory today. These are not theories, Carlz. So yes, Iran is a very different kettle of fish to Iraq. Iraq, they could just drive across the border in tanks across open country out of Kuwait and other countries. This is not the situation with Iran. I would not want to fight in Iran. If I was an American Marine, they're sending over another 4,500, 5,000 or so at the moment. I would be sitting there thinking, you know what? Let's go back to Afghanistan. Afghanistan starts to look all right in comparison to Iran. Not that Afghanistan was a cakewalk, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to minimize it, but in comparison, I think Iran would be its own special kind of hell. And the IRGC would be its own special kind of enemy. Now, the saving grace would be that, yes, you would have a huge sympathetic Iranian population on your side, but the thought of a ground war in Iran is just ugly, ugly, ugly. There is no, what happens? So we've been talking about the technological advantage that the US has, and that's very, very real. Terrain can be, when it's used well, can be a great leveler. We saw this, an example of this would be the Viet Cong during Vietnam. All right. Now, this is pre-satellite imagery and pre-drones and pre-night vision and all that stuff. But the Viet Cong would use tunnels and go underground, and they would pop up out of tunnels, and they would have traps and all kinds of things, asymmetric warfare. The terrain of a place like Iran gives tremendous opportunities for asymmetric warfare. The fact that you've got a large civilian population for these people to blend into and to hide within creates opportunities for terrible asymmetry. And there is only so much that your technology can do to give you an edge. It'd just be hell from start to finish. And I really hope that this can be resolved without a ground war.
There's another part of this that we haven't talked about, and I don't want to start another conversation, but there is a lot of pressure of the IRGC and people in the Iranian military for defecting, right?
Yes.
That's its own whole thing. So whilst, yes, they are currently defending Iran under the IRGC and under the mullahs, there is a massive push and pressure from the regular people of Iran for these people to defect. I think that plays a big part in it as well. Again, I'm like, just for the chat's sake, I'm not an oracle and I'm not a war general, but I'm using the same information that we all have access to, and this is my opinion. You're welcome to disagree, but I think anyone in this position of going, well, I know better and your opinion's wrong, like, we're all playing a fool's game here. None of us actually know. That's my point.
All right, last question, last of the super chats. Topher, how do we get this government out of power without an election? My answer to that is be careful what you wish for. Why would you want to depose a government without an election?
Why would you want a coup?
Yeah, that delegitimizes whatever follows. It sets a terrible precedent, which will then be used as permission for the other side to do all kinds of things in the future. That is unfortunately how you get into an out of the frying pan into the fire kind of situation. That's the reality of what that would be. No, hard pass. We need to do it in an election. We need to do it peacefully through the mechanisms that are already built into our constitution. To step outside of that. Now, I'm not saying that there's no circumstance ever under which you wouldn't step outside of that. If the constitution has failed, if all of those norms are gone, if you're in a situation like Iran, you're not waiting for the next election, right? You've got to take matters into your own hands and do it by any means necessary. We are not there. And being too keen to throw aside democratic norms and to try and operate outside of the system that we've been given actually risks accelerating our path down, our progress down the wrong pathway, and losing what's left of our system and the functional system that we do still have. So I would question the premise of the question.
I think the other thing is too, if you do something like that, I mean, people still, like, the left are still not over what happened to Whitlam. It gets brought up all the time. Doing something like that, and can I just say one thing to close out? We talk about how bad Australia is. Like, yeah, I agree. Like, compared to what we know, things right now are diabolical. But no one's been, like, slaughtered on the streets by our government right now. No one is facing firing squads in Australia right now. Not to say it can't happen here, but, like, let's just put things in perspective. We don't need a coup because right now we're not hanging people from cranes in public squares. We didn't just slaughter 40, 50, 60,000 of our own civilians who are peacefully protesting. So, calling for a coup and asking how we overthrow the government, like, that's what you do when you live in Iran or Cuba or North Korea. Let's hold some kind of sense of decorum here in the country. You know, we want to do things better. We want things to get better. Having a coup, overthrowing the government, talking about like an uprising, and then what?
Yeah.
We live in anarchy for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like I think people need to think about things before they say them.
So just a quick one here by Nice Work ABC. According to Jared Rennick, the Liberal Party has enough of a war chest to carry them through a couple of elections. That may be true at a federal level. And unless the federal party wants to lend a bunch of money to the state party, which I'd be, wouldn't be unprecedented, but I'd be a bit surprised. It's the Victorian Liberal Party that are in trouble, and they're going to have a hard time with the next Victorian election. Alrighty, let's wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you, Carly.
Thanks,
a pleasure as always.
Good chat, fiery chat, good chat.
I will not be driving to Melbourne this week, not with prices the way they are. And so there will be a show. There will be a show. Sorry?
What's the fuel price for you guys yet? Has it gone up yet?
Well, I'm on diesel. I don't pay attention to the other stuff. So diesel's about $2.95 at the moment, which is not too bad. And to be honest, most of the servos in town do still have it, which is, we're doing better than a lot of towns a bit further north of here. Farmers can't get deliveries, so they're having to drive their tractors into town to fill up the massive tanks, and of course that's draining the towns quickly. I don't blame the farmers; they've got to do something, and it's just one of these really desperate situations. You've got farmers that have got literally millions of dollars invested into crops that are sitting in the ground right now. They've paid for the fertilizer, they've paid for all the fuel to put them in, to seed, to drill, to irrigate, the water licenses and the water allocations and the temporary water purchases, and then the diesel for the pumps and the pivots to go around and actually grow this damn crop. They've got thousands of tons sitting there, and for a lack of another 30,000 litres of diesel, it's going to rot in the ground. And some of these people, not all of them, but some of them are going to go bankrupt. Some of them are going to not all of them can afford to take a hit that size. So it's bad. And that's part of my decision. Like, could I pay the money for the tank of fuel to get down to Melbourne and back? Yes, I could. Do I feel okay using a tank of diesel to do that? No, I don't. That just doesn't feel like the right thing to do under the current circumstances. So you'll be deprived of my presence, I'm sorry to say. But we will still do a show. We will do it like this. We'll pre-record it. We'll go through a bunch of topics, and it will go to air at 7 p.m. as usual. Yeah,
so we'll just take a step back from the in-person just for now, guys. But yes, shows will continue as per normal. Also, guys, just so you know, you can join the Discord. The link is in the description of this video. That's where everyone goes and has a chat after the show. I know you guys love to keep the conversation going. It's free to join the general channel, but if you want to join the members channels, you do it through Ko-fi up here. And there's a great little community in there. So this is where we go and have respectful conversations, just so you know, try and keep things above board. But other than that, let's get out of here. I haven't had dinner, so I'm hungry.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye. I should probably hit